If I were to start a newsletter, I definitely could do probably at least 3 million a year, I would think. With
By yourself?
just me and an assistant.
You said the first HustleCon that you did, you made 60,000 from that?
I think it did between 50 and 60 in revenue, and I probably walked away with 40 grand. I called myself a $50,000 millionaire. Like, that first 50 grand might as well have been $1 million. I remember I was like, should I go to Thailand? Should I bring these girls with me to Thailand? Like 27 grand might as well have been 25 million. The cool thing about a newsletter is you write it as if it's just me writing to you, not me to millions of people. Just I'm writing to you, that's it. And that built a lot of loyalty.
Let's just assume that the person that's listening is a great writer. What is the next step? I know when we spoke, you said you have this process of reverse engineering your success.
Do you have your phone on you?
I do.
All right, you're gonna help me do some math. So
we spoke yesterday and you mentioned to me that by the age of 21, you had made this decision that by the time that you were 30, you would have made $20 million. And so for most people, when they're 21, they're just getting out of college or they're just starting their first full-time job. They have no idea what they want to do, right? So what gave you the certainty at the age of 21 that you wanted to make 20 million by the time you were 30?
Well, I had certainty that I wanted it. I didn't have certainty that I could get it. But I basically grew up in a middle-class family. My parents were business owners and their business did well when I was in high school. But for the majority of my life, just a very normal background. And I just didn't want to have to worry about financial stuff. I saw what it meant to maybe not have a lot. And I thought, if I could just remove that from my life, that would be cool, right? Mm-hmm. And so I just read a lot of entrepreneurial biographies, and I just noticed a pattern of people who have done major things in their lives. A lot of times, they're not like Mark Zuckerberg, where they do something huge right off the bat when they're 21, but they have small hits along the way. And I was like, I think I can get a small hit enough to make that much money by the time I'm 30, and if I do that. That way, eventually, if I have a family, I could just focus on emotional and spiritual stuff for them, and I focus on being present for them, and not have to worry about financial stuff, because it kind of freaked me out that we don't live that long, and I'm going to spend 40 or 50 hours a week doing something I hate just to provide. I just didn't like the idea of that, and so I basically spoke to a bunch of wealthy people, and I asked them how much money they spend per year. And one guy said 50 or 60 or something, 60 grand a month. And I was like, that's so much money. But if I have roughly $20 million and I only spend 3% of that per year, $20 million would never run out, and it would actually continue to grow. So if I could make that by the age of 30, I could live a very lavish lifestyle. And I don't spend $60,000 a month, by the way. But I was like, that's a good benchmark to where you can live a really fancy life and not ever run out of money, and just only focus on important stuff as opposed to just money. And I just thought that was I thought it was a dream. So I had a goal, but I had to make a plan. But yeah, that was my goal.
Yeah. You know what's interesting? I was actually having a conversation with my mom, and I said to her, I was like, I want to get to the point where I just don't have to think about money. That is a dream. Don't have to think about money. And I think for so many people, I would say 99.9% of people, every single week, every single day, every single month, they're thinking about, how am I going to pay the bills? How, money is always on the mind. And so I'm curious for you, in your childhood, in kind of your early years, were there experiences where maybe you would even see your parents or people that you grew up around, they were just constantly worrying or thinking about money?
Yeah, my parents owned a fruit stand. That was their business. And then eventually my mom became a school teacher. And then the fruit stand kind of grew into one thing and then to another thing. And then when I was in fourth grade, my father left to start a new business. And I remember thinking that's really stressful. Are we going to be able to eat and have that, are we going to be able to provide and have clothes? I remember feeling that feeling, and it was kind of traumatizing. My parents also had this mentality, which they're not wrong for having this mentality that a lot of parents have, which is it's my way or the highway. I pay the bills. So that was often the reply that they would have is well, if I pay for things, you're going to do it my way. Mm-hmm. And I hated that feeling. I fucking hated it. And so those two feelings, I was I don't want to feel this way. I want control and I want power. Mm-hmm. Not necessarily power over anyone else, but I wanted power over myself. And so I just remember being in 7th or 8th grade, where it's I want money so no one can tell me what to do. I really want that feeling. Mm-hmm. And I just read like a ton of books. And when you read all these books that I would read about, like biographies, basically, you know how they say like you're the average of the 5 people you spend most of, I felt like I was the average of them. And so I started getting used to like succeeding, even though I wasn't actually succeeding. I started like getting used to like reading all these cool stories. And it kind of just like, you know, maybe there's a way where money doesn't have to like be everything you worry about. And I still think about money all the time, by the way, but like it's not from like a scarcity mindset, which I wanted. And then, or which I didn't want. But then when I started my first business, The Hustle, dude, I paid myself $20,000 a year for like the first 2.5 years. So I lived in San Francisco. So I was like poor. And then I was poor. I started a business in college and I was like paying for my own life. I was poor then. And so I just didn't like the idea of being poor. No one does, but I really hated it. And so that's kind of like why I had all these goals.
Yeah. You know, I think I was listening to an interview with Hassan Minaj, and he always talks about like the drive shaft, like understanding someone's drive shaft. And I think it's so interesting that for someone like you, obviously, you built a business that you sold for over $20 million. Like people that achieve that level of success, from what I've seen, they're usually motivated by 2 things. It's either extreme desperation or extreme inspiration. And one of the things that you mentioned was like just wanting to have that feeling of control over your life, like hating the feeling that you weren't in control of your life. Is there a certain experience or like a story that you even remember from your childhood where like you really felt that feeling of like, oh, I just hate this, like the angst of that?
Yeah, I think I told you this, but basically when I was like 21, so like between the ages of like, I went to college on a track and field scholarship. So I was like a pretty good athlete back then. And I like started experimenting with like drugs and alcohol and I got super into it. And I loved beer. Beer was like my favorite thing on earth. And I like kind of fell down this slippery slope to where I like pretty much became a full-blown alcoholic. And I got arrested like 2 or 3 times in like a month. And so I had to spend like collectively like 5 days in jail, like 2 days for one thing, and then 3 days and 3 nights or something like that for this other thing. And I remember being in jail, in like county jail, and it was so horrible. I remember getting out of there and thinking, I never want to do anything bad ever again. I don't want to break any rules. I want to follow the exact rules, do everything the right way. Because I remember coming home, I had this 85-pound pit bull, this gorgeous dog. And I remember coming home, and when I got arrested, I didn't like, when you get arrested, like it's hard to call people because I don't know if you do, but I don't know people's phone number. And so when I got arrested, they take me to jail and I'm like, shit, I don't know anyone's number. I can't call anyone to go get my dog. And so my fucking dog had to sit there for like 2 days in the house, and he had water and food, but he like shit all over the house when I got home. And I was like devastated. I was like, oh my God, I was in this cage and I failed you. I felt so bad about myself. And I felt like I let down this animal it's my responsibility. And so like pretty much there, I was like, I got to get my act together. Like I'm a loser. I have potential, but I'm being a loser right now. And I basically got sober. And I failed a couple of times. I relapsed when I was in San Francisco, and then I did it again. But like getting in trouble was like, it was like a really big deal. And then after I got arrested, by the way, I don't know if you know the story, I had cold emailed the founder of Airbnb when I was in college, and he offered me a job. And I got the job. And back then it was called Air Bed and Breakfast. It was like early in their company. And they gave me a job, but then I lied about my resume. I basically said I didn't have a criminal record, and they found it. And I moved out to San Francisco and everything, and I showed up and they're like, dude, you lied. You're out. We fired you before you even started. And so like getting in trouble in that like 3-month period, it was like the worst. It felt horrible. I felt very, very bad about myself. And from then I was like, I want power over myself, like big time.
Yeah. You know what? I think, like it's a story that resonates. And I think one of the things that I'm curious about is what was the beginning of like those tribulations with alcohol? I think that's something that I've seen you mention a lot, like your journey of getting sober, like the effects of alcohol. And it's even interesting, you say the thing about wanting to feel in control when you were like a kid, when you were a child. But then what's the one thing that makes you completely out of control?
Yeah, it's alcohol.
Drinking alcohol.
Yeah, I think that like, well, it kind of stems from some place. I want to control because like I was nervous a lot. I was a pretty, I still am, but I was much more of an anxious person. So I'm like, well, if I have money, that's just like one thing less to worry about. But alcohol makes you not worry about stuff as much. And so I got super into it for that reason. I'm like, oh my God, I don't worry right now. Like, so it was very much a self-medicating thing. And so when I got into booze, yeah, like, and then part of it was like, I'm scared to like do things. I'm afraid to talk to girls. I'm afraid to like not be myself. And for some reason, alcohol makes me feel better.
Mm.
And so it definitely helped. And it was like the greatest feeling ever, being drunk.
How would you feel? I'm just curious, like when you go back, like how would you feel when you were drunk?
Just numb, to be honest, but like just numb. But like, I mean, there was a period where I was intoxicated every single minute of the day for like a year and a half. And so like, I don't remember like, there's like months where I'm like, I don't really remember too much about what I was doing then. And so I was like super into it. And I basically moved out to San Francisco and I relapsed. And I went to a homeless clinic to quit drinking. Like it was pretty insane. And like I remember I had like Apple like these corded headphones, and I pull up in this like I was just walking, but I didn't have a lot of income because I was running my own business. And so I went, and so I qualified for like this like free clinic. And I also was like, dude, I'm a junkie kind of. I'm like a loser. I should be with these people. This is what I am. I need to experience this. And I remember like I had these headphones in. I'm like, what am I doing here, dude? I got like an iPhone. Like I had like I'm not. My life was not set up to be this bad. Why am I behaving this way? And so, yeah, I got sober, and it was like 3 or 4 months after getting sober, it was like the greatest feeling on earth. I like that was when I really felt in control. I'm like, I control my emotions. I control so much stuff, and that was like the greatest change of my life.
Yeah. No, that's amazing. I think for most people that kind of get addicted to alcohol, they start drinking almost at like an obsessive rate. There's something that you're like trying to escape from, like it's a form of escapism. You say that even it's this feeling of being numb. And I guess for you, when you reflect now, given what you've achieved and the fact that you've been sober, do you have clarity on like, what was it exactly at that time you were escaping from?
Okay, quick break. Later on in the episode, Sam's going to explain exactly how you can build a $27 million newsletter. But first, let me tell you this. If you're going to start an online business, you need the right website domain. Introducing our friends at Pork Bun, who are sponsoring today's episode, and they're going to help you get a custom domain for just $1.64. So let me tell you this. When I was looking for my website domain, I did some research to make sure I got the best deal, and I found Pork Bun. I started by searching for the standard .com and .net domain names, but then I saw Callum.bio was available, and it had a special deal on it. I bought the domain for just $1.64, and the reason that I bought it is that I wanted people to be able to find all of my work in one place. And the good part is not many people have .bio domains yet. A lot of the best names are still available. So now I own Callum.bio. It looks super professional and it's easy for people to remember. So stay tuned. I'll be sharing my new website soon. But the great news is that I've also hooked you up with the same deal that I got on my domain. So if you want to get your .bio name while it's still available, just go to the link in the description and use code GETYOURBIO to get your .bio domain for just $1.64. That's all it is. Thanks again to Pork Bun for sponsoring this episode, and back to the show.
Just like some weird stuff that happened with like parent issues of just like getting in trouble and like getting yelled at, parents arguing, things like that. Like I just didn't want to like confront it. And it just felt better to be intoxicated. Yeah. I also think I'm genetically predisposed to like this stuff. But yeah, just escaping like weird traumatic issues when you're like a kid is that's what I've learned it all comes down to is basically is like you experience something as a kid that could even seem innocent. For example, I hate flying. I don't like flying at all. I'll drive across the country oftentimes instead of flying. I had to go through years of therapy to remember it was because when we were kids, my brother was playing with me and he put my arms behind my head and he dunked my head in the water, just like teasing me. And one time water got in and like I thought I was drowning. And that stemmed all of my like claustrophobia issues. So like it all comes from like weird stuff when you're a kid. I think.
Yeah. That's interesting. It's like a lot of our story and how we behave as adults is like built in our first 10 years.
It's all, I firmly believe it's like all from that, from that period, which is kind of scary, right?
Yeah.
When you have kids, you're like, because like, for example, I think I thought booze were cool and I didn't, like my father one time, I saw him take a straw out of a drink. I was like, why are you taking that straw? He goes, men don't drink with straws. And so my whole life, I never used a straw. And he was referring to like his Jack and Coke, you know, it was like, or like, you know, like those little dainty straws.
Yeah.
Like I remember for years, I remember seeing guys and I'm an adult, like, why do you drink from a straw? Men don't drink from straws. And people are like, what are you talking about? I'm like, well, my dad told me that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It all comes, everything comes from when you're a kid.
Yeah. You know, you spoke about your dog, Sid. And there was this post you did. You said, long live Sid. This dog saved me from being a degenerate. A man's dog in his 20s is special. They see the evolution. I love him so much. I got my life together because of him. Got sober because of him. Why do you say that? Why was he so meaningful to you?
So I got this dog because I knew a guy who was a drug dealer. And the drug dealer got arrested. And they were like, hey, can you watch Jake's dog? I was like, yeah, watch him. And they're like, he'll be back in 2 weeks. And he just didn't get out. And that's how I got this dog. And he was a huge, like, white pit bull, like the meanest looking dog ever. And he didn't get out of jail, so I got him. And so I had him for 15 years. And the reason I loved that dog was because typically when you're 20, you don't have the same friends when you're 20 as you do when you're 35, at least my age. Like, and for a man, you know, men develop later than women. For a man, you're developing in your 20s, like well into your late 20s. And like, there's not that many people that are around for the whole evolution. So it felt special to have like a being there who could see that. But also dogs are special, man, because you gotta take care of them. I like having responsibility. Having responsibility makes me feel good. You know what I mean? And so I have a family now and it's like the greatest feeling on earth. It's the most masculine feeling you could have is to take care of someone or something. Mm-hmm. And so it just, yeah, I love that. I think that like men should try to have children. You should try to have a family. Like that's cool. Like having someone to like devote yourself to is a really good feeling.
Yeah. You said this dog saved me from being a degenerate. I'm curious in those kind of like early stages of having Sid, like what were some of the changes that you were seeing in yourself?
So I'll give you an example. So I was like an okay student, but I didn't really take it that seriously. But I remember there was an accounting meetup. And at this accounting meetup, they were going to give away $200 in a raffle. And I needed that $200 to hire a trainer to teach me how to train this dog because I didn't have any money. And I went to this accounting meetup and they were like, if you switch your major to like an accounting, by the way, like you can come to these all the time. And I was like, fuck yeah, sign me up. So I switched my major to accounting just to like go to these meetups. And I eventually won $100 or $200 at one of these things. But then I liked accounting. And so like I would like do these things just for this freaking dog. And like it actually meaningfully changed my life.
Yeah.
But that's like one example. But I remember like, I can't get in trouble tonight. I got to go home. You know what I mean? Like just that simple feeling.
Yeah. You know what? It's funny because you mentioned responsibility. I think it's actually a really big thing for men is like, you almost need something larger than yourself to be a good person for. Like something to like, it makes you better. Because there's someone or something that you're doing it for. It's not just purely selfish.
Yeah, I think that like, so I had that 20 million goal partially because I was like, I'm gonna have a family and it would feel good. And I wasn't dating anyone then. Like I was way off, but it felt good to like think like this is for the share with my people, and that's like a really good feeling. I think that a lot of people, particularly in business, when you're like making money just to make more money, that's a really empty feeling. Mm-hmm. But when you're doing it to like give it away, or you're doing it to create jobs or something like that, when you climb up that Maslow's hierarchy of need, it feels really good. Mm-hmm. Like it's a very good feeling.
Yeah.
And yeah, I just enjoy having. I remember when I was 26, one of my employees got pregnant and was gonna have a baby, and I was like, feels like I'm having a baby. Like, what the hell? Like, how am I gonna make this business work to be able to support this woman and her husband and her child? Like, that was the feeling. And I was really, really nervous, but it felt amazing. It was like, it felt awesome to have that pressure. I'm like, I have to make this business work to support this woman and her family, or to like create a workplace where we can like pay salaries. And it was very scary and awesome feeling. Yeah. I really like that. I'm a big fan of, have you heard the phrase burning the boats?
Yeah.
I love burning the boats. Like basically it's like this Spanish conquistador. He came from, Spain to America, and he lights his boats on fire, and he goes, "Look, boys, we better, take care of business because we don't got no boats. We ain't going home." And like, I love that feeling. I thoroughly like that feeling.
I think it was also, I hope I'm getting this right. Otherwise, my primary school Latin teacher is going to get mad. But I think there was also a story of when they came to sack Troy, they obviously came on boats and they turn up on the beach, and there's this huge wall that they have to scale in order to get into Troy. And so to create the impression, to create the belief in the minds of the soldiers that they either had to sack the city or die, they burnt all the boats.
Yeah, I love that
feeling. We don't have a
feeling.
choice. It's you just get it done.
I love that feeling. I think that we should put ourselves in some more situations like that. I think that is where greatness kind of comes from, is when you're your back's up against the wall. That's why a lot of badass businesses are founded by immigrants. It's when you come from nothing, it's I got to make this work. So I love that feeling. I'm a big fan of that.
Yeah. And so it seems like in your story, that feeling of the back against the wall, it's you come out of jail, you see the effects that it even had on Sid and the people around you. Now it's not just something that's detrimental to you. It's actually beings, animals, people around you it's hurting them.
Yeah.
And so you start to make this progress from being a degenerate to actually starting to get your life in order. You mentioned there were moments where you relapsed. And I think that's interesting. It's something that I've heard Alex Hormozy talk about. It's something that I experienced, which is that whenever you make a journey of change and you go on this path of you start at point A and you're trying to get to point B and it's completely different. You start on this path and every now and then you start looking back to where you were before. You kind of get tempted with your old life.
Yeah.
Talk to me about those relapses. What was happening there?
Dude, being the lifestyle that I had of being drunk all the time, and so basically I lived in in Nashville at the time, and I lived across the street from the projects, and just chilling on the corner and drinking all day with these guys. It was so fun. It was so much fun. What's that? Have you ever seen that YouTube video where a kid's I just want to do hood rat stuff with my friends? That's what I did every night. And it was honestly so much fun until you realize you're a fucking loser. You provide no value to anyone and you feel sick all the time. It's fun until it ain't fun. And it always becomes not fun. And so I remember getting my act together a little bit for about 4 months, and I get out to San Francisco, and immediately I'm in a new place, and I'm super uncomfortable. I'm super awkward. I'm nervous. I'm by myself. I don't have a lot of money. I'm nervous about paying rent. I just moved out there to join. I basically left school and moved to San Francisco to join Airbnb, and that didn't work out. And I'm I don't know what the fuck I'm gonna do, and I'm trying to fit in. And so it all came down from not being confident in my own values and things like that. And so I started drinking again to escape, but also to fit in. And then about a year later, I really kicked it for good, and it worked out.
Yeah, it's interesting. Even with the context that you provided earlier, it's as soon as you start to feel out of control, it's reach for the alcohol. It's that stabilizing kind of.
Yeah, and it's rooted down into and so I think I told you I'm obsessed with reverse engineering things, and so I'm pretty into discipline, and now I am into discipline and having a routine and things like that, and then having a plan and executing towards a plan, because when you're someone like me, and I would think I told you this analogy, but it kind of feels when you're this there's a bunch of people out there who are these high energy people, and they're like a car, and someone's sitting in the car and pressing the gas as fast as they can, but your back wheels are lifted up. And it's you have to make sure you point that car in the right direction, because if you point in the wrong direction, it could be destruction. You're either going to get to where you're going to go to a place you don't really want to go, and you're going to get there fast, or you're going to get in a wreck along the way. Picking the right lanes to stay within is really important. And so for people like me, if I have a plan and a clear destination, that's where you're going. I feel very happy and I feel unstoppable. Yeah. But as soon as that plan goes away, or things like that, then it's oh, let's go this way. Let's go. You know what I mean? Yeah. And so it's important. That's why I love reverse engineering and having a very specific plan. So I'll always have 5 and 10 year goals and things like that, because without it, I just kind of can go off the rails.
Yeah. And I think to your point, it's we have this And I think people will relate. You have this energy, you have this like fire. And if it's not directed in the right way, it can be completely detrimental. But if it is directed in the right way, it can achieve incredible outcomes with what we saw with your media company.
And by the way, that's why I love UFC.
Hmm.
UFC, the fighters, they're freaks, right? They're animals.
Yeah.
Like they're these men who want to fight to the death in their underwear in front of millions of people. And like there's a funny Dana White quote where they're like, hey, this one guy got arrested for like getting a DUI, getting in a fight or something. And he's like, yeah. I'm like, well, you angry? He's like, I'm angry, but these guys are animals. What do you expect? Like, and so my goal is to point them in the right direction and give them some, and point that car the right way. But when you're crazy enough to do that, you're going to do other crazy things. And I think that for anyone who's like wants to achieve anything interesting, they probably have a little devil in them. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. And it's just about keeping it in bounds. You know, one of the things you mentioned even with the relapses is that after about a year and a half, you actually kicked it for good. I'm curious, like, what was the difference? Like, what made that time different? Whatever happened within that period of time?
Dude,
Okay, 1 second. This episode is sponsored by our friends at Cloaked. Now, one of the most annoying, irritating things is when you get these spam calls on your phone. An unknown number pops up, you answer it thinking it may be something actually important, and it turns out it's just a spam call. Well, I was shocked to find out that if you're getting these spam calls, there is a high probability that your phone number and personal information is on the dark web or on other data broker websites. And the scary part is that by having your phone number or email address, spammers can stalk you, hack into your accounts, and even get access to your home address, banking information, or social security number. And so when I found this out, I had to make sure I was protected online. And the first thing I did was go to cloaked.com and use their free security scan. And it's so simple to use. You type in your phone number, which they keep secure, by the way. They do not share it. And Cloaked will check over 120 different data broker websites to see if your information is there. And if they find anything, they can help you remove it and stay protected online going forward. Here's what you're going to do. This is step 1. I'm going to link Cloaked's free security scan in the description. Click on that, check if you are protected. It only takes 30 seconds. They keep all of your information secure and private. And if you want to try their paid plan, use the promo code Callum at checkout to get 20% off a Cloaked subscription. That's Callum, C-A-L-U-M, at checkout to get 20% off Cloaked. Without further ado, let's get back to the show.
Yeah, I went to this clinic. It was called the San Francisco South of Market Mental Clinic, I guess. And it was basically homeless people. And I met this doctor named Jocelyn Porquez. And Jocelyn was like, you know, you don't seem like a lot of the other people that are here. You're pretty articulate. You don't seem like that mentally ill. Like, what's going on? And I kind of told her my story. And she really believed in me. And so she was my doctor for like 8 or 9 years. And so once I made above $15,000 a year or something like that, or I had income, I no longer qualified for Obamacare. So I just started paying her out of pocket. And so she actually saw me go from like, whatever I was, like a loser, to like meeting my girlfriend who became my wife, starting a business, selling that business for many tens of millions of dollars. And she's like, it was so awesome to like impress her. I was like, I want to impress you. Like, you believe in me. I'm gonna be the best story that you've like. I want to be like your win story. And so having her like on my side like really helped me, like, because I wanted to show off to her and like make her proud, things like that.
Yeah, someone that believes in you. It's interesting. In everyone's story, I feel like that's a success. Even if it's just one person, there's always that one person that believed in them. It's so critical.
Yeah, like I wanted to go back to her next month. I mean, like, check this out. Like, look what I'm doing now. You know what I mean? It was very exciting, and progress is pretty like addicting. Like, to like progress on something, like it feels pretty awesome.
Yeah.
Like whether it's weight loss or whatever, like it feels awesome to like get results.
Yeah. You know, we're going to get into the newsletter stuff and how you built like a multi-million-dollar newsletter and the blueprint behind it. But before we do, talk to me about some of your early businesses. I actually even have a list of them.
What do you have?
You got a hot dog stand. You had an online business selling whiskey.
Yeah.
A roommate matching app.
So yeah. So I had a hot dog stand. It was called Southern Sam's, wieners as big as a baby's arm. I met a guy who had a hot dog stand in storage and he wasn't using it. And at the time I had $500 and I was like, I bet you I can get a day's worth of supplies for a hot dog cart. And so I went and got my like food license or whatever. And he let me rent his cart and I would pay him at the end of the month. So he gave me a month for free, basically, so I could start this business. And it was awesome. It was badass. It was so much fun. I did it because that was like one of the jobs that you could have, like, and you could still drink during the day. Because I would work from like 11 to 3. I would go to class from like 3 to 8, and then work from like 9 to like 3 in the morning. You know, the bar scene. And I would kill it, man. Some days I would walk home with like $1,000 in like $1 bills. And me and my I would hire this young woman to work with me. We called it being hood rich. We just had a stack of cash, just like a fat stack, and it felt awesome. And then other days we'd make like $80, but it was like 110 degrees in Nashville in the summertime. It sucked. It was so bad. And I got curious about like the internet because I was like, I don't want to work outside all the time. This is really hard. And so I started a online website that sold a very special type of whiskey that you could only buy in a handful of stores in Nashville, but like people all over the world wanted it. And so I started selling this thing, and I'd be in finance class and I'd hear my PayPal go ka-ching, ka-ching, ka-ching. I'm like, dude, I just made $500. I made $1,000. And I start thinking, I'm like, by the way, do I need like a fucking liquor license to be doing this? Like, what am I doing? And so I go to the lawyer, like a lawyer would come to school in like the entrepreneurship like clinic, and you could ask him questions. And I told him what I was doing. He's like, yeah, you're breaking the law, dude. You can't do this. And I was like, well, shit. So I bailed on all that and I moved to San Francisco. And when I got fired from Airbnb, I happened to be staying on an Airbnb at a guy's house who had an idea for a roommate matching app. And it was basically like Tinder, but for roommates, which was stupid because it should have just been Tinder for Tinder. Like, that would have been a way bigger business. Like, it should have been, I dated a girl who I met on the app. Like, I was like, I don't even need a roommate right now. I used the app to find my roommates, and I was like, fuck, I want to meet people. Like, what's going on? And we sold it for not a lot of money, but enough. And then after that, I started a conference company.
Yeah.
And the conference company did all right. And then I started the hustle after that, which eventually was life-changing.
Yeah. You know, it's actually funny watching you even talk about it, because I can see like your emotion, like you still get so amped about it. It's like so fun to you. It's kind of like listening to your stories. It's like, it's the degenerate's guide to business. And
yeah, it's the same. It's all from the same place. Like, it's fun to do bad stuff sometimes. And like, when you're making money online, as long as you're doing it in an ethical way and supplying customers, and it sometimes it feels like what you're doing is illegal. You're like, have you ever made money on the internet and seeing like gotten like the ka-ching? You're like, oh my God, this is fucking awesome. Like, I got my first sale. It's like the greatest feeling on earth. You're like, how is this legal? This is so cool. It like kind of is that same energy. So yeah, it felt awesome.
Yeah, no, I love it. I love it. Okay, so it's interesting actually, the story of the hustle. Of course, you go on to sell it for rumored $27 million to HubSpot, but it started as a conference. So talk to me about that. Like, what was kind of the early origin of the hustle?
Yeah, I sold the app. I worked at the company that bought it for 1 year and 1 day. And then I started this conference. And the idea was like, I'm going to do this conference called HustleCon. It was a horrible name. It was like TED Talk for entrepreneurs. Yeah, it was like a horrible name, but I thought it was funny. And I was like, I'm going to meet someone at the event, hopefully, and I'll partner with them and we'll start a business together. But this is a cool way to kill time. And I did the first event. I think I had the idea, and then 6 weeks later, the first event happened, and it made like $60,000. And then I was like, that was amazing. I just made $60,000 in 6 weeks. That was awesome. So I said, let's do it again. And so I spent 6 weeks or 8 weeks or something driving around the country on my motorcycle, just celebrating. And I did it again. I think the next time it made like 150 or 180. I don't remember. Something like that, over $100,000. And I was like, that was amazing. Let's do it again. But then I started thinking, I'm like, man, if it rains, like my business is like out of business. Like if something bad happens, like I'm doing all this work for 1 day, like that's not the savviest business. And in order to make people come to the conference, I created this newsletter where I would write stories that were about each speaker. And I made them look really cool. And I got like 10,000 people to sign up for that newsletter. And I was like, you know, maybe this newsletter thing is kind of interesting. And I'd read the biography of Ted Turner. He was he owned CNN. He founded CNN. He was from the South. He was from Atlanta. And he was kind of like me. He was kind of crazy. Like a Southern guy. I identified with him. And I was like, if this fucking guy can do it, I could do it. And so I had this idea of like, if we create a daily email, if you do the math is such that if I can charge $50 per 1,000 sends to my email, which was roughly the going rate, and I can get 1 million people to subscribe, and if I send them an email every single day of the month, that would be like $1.5 million a month. And if I'm pretty good at writing, tech is like a pretty big sector. I bet you I can get 1 million people to subscribe to this newsletter and build an $18 million business. And then I was like, and if I get 5 million people, that could get close to $100 million. I bet you I can do this. And so that was like the concept early on was that we're going to create a daily newsletter that tells you everything you need to know about business and tech. And we'll have some ads in there. And we only need like 2 or 3 writers to do it. And so it's going to be like a really, really profitable thing. And that was the original premise. And I showed this to a bunch of people, including like, I cold emailed like CEOs of like $1 billion huge media companies. And they were like, this is silly. This will never work. And I sold the company. The year I sold, we were probably going to be in the $20 million in revenue range. So I sold before I was able to get to 100 million, which was my goal. But some of my great friends like Austin from Morning Brew, they're around $100 million now. So like my premise, my theory was on point, which I'm very proud about. But I sold before we actually got there.
Yeah. I called it earlier. I said it's almost like the degenerate's guide to business, like listening to you. And it's interesting because there's like zero fear. Like when I listen to you recount the story, you'll mention cold emailing certain CEOs, or when you started HustleCon, starting this newsletter to promote it. And I'm just thinking to like the average or like the normal person, even someone that's listening, even me, if I was listening to that, I would be like, if I wanted to do a conference and I was like, at the time, kind of like I wasn't in a great position, you would have so much procrastination, so much fear, like no one's going to come, or how am I going to get any of these guests?
Dude, but what's the alternative? You like go in a cubicle doing shit that you hate until you die? I'm afraid of that. Like when people do that, I'm like, aren't you fearful? Like, aren't you fearful of spending your time, your life, your one life? Aren't you nervous about spending your time in a way that you don't want to spend? That's what I'm fearful of. So, and what's the downside? You look silly. I mean, I don't know. Like that's not that big a deal. And dude, even if you fail, you look pretty cool. Like if you do something like spectacular and you put your effort into it, like that's the difference between America and England. That's one of the when we were joking is like in America, if you try really hard and you fail, you're still like in many cases
you can love it.
You can love it. You're like that's sick. You swung. That's great. So I kind of like in the back of my head, I thought that. I also always de-risk things. So like I get crazy about it. Like I remember I had $1,000 that I had in a bank account and I'm like, worst case scenario, I'm going to move to my mom's house. And I got $1,000 I can get my plane ticket home. So I'm good. So everything plus that is upside.
Yeah.
That's kind of was the attitude.
Yeah. I actually love that. It's like in the beginning, almost set up that it's like the ultimate like fail safe.
Yeah, I always have those. So to this day, I have a certain bank account where it's like everything can go to shit. We're good. As long as this is good, we're good. Yeah, I believe in like protecting the downside and de-risking things because that makes it way easier emotionally.
Yeah. You know what? When you, and it also means you can take more risk. Like, cause now you're like, oh, okay. Like it's not going to go to complete shit. And now I can really go for it.
And the fear should be, if I don't take this risk now while I'm young and have few responsibilities, if I don't have a sense of urgency, that window is going to pass. So like the fear of what you were saying of like sitting on your ass, it should be the other way around. It's like, if I don't get to work now, it's never going to work because I'm always going to be too afraid to do it. And so, yeah, that's what I think. Yeah. I have a homemade tattoo on my feet that says act now. Like I'm like
homemade tattoo.
Yeah, with like you use like a sewing needle.
Yeah.
It's called a stick and poke. It's super ghetto. It's like pretty lame. Like it's very dangerous. It's a very dumb thing to do. But I did it when I was 21. And I believe in like action and like big time.
Yeah. You know, before you start HustleCon, you sell this roommate matching app. You work at that company.
Selling it is like even glamorizing it. I think I made like 30 grand. Like that's how much I made.
You work at the company that you sold it to for 13 months. I'm curious.
12 months in one day.
12 months in one day. I'm curious for someone with your personality. Like what was those?
Oh, they should have fired me. I shouldn't have even worked there. Is that what you're gonna ask? What it was like? They should have fired me. No, I was horrible.
Did that create that created that feeling of like, okay, I'm just going to go for it again. It's the second I get out of this, I'm going for it again.
Yeah. And it wasn't like I was a bad employee because I wanted to be bad. Like I wanted to contribute. I just didn't have a lot of skills or anything. And I hadn't had a job before. I didn't know how to like interact with people. So I wanted to do it. But yeah, it was just like I knew I basically like read and studied for like a year and like learned and networked. And I was like, this is my this is like an apprenticeship for me. So I'm going to take advantage of it. And then on that one day I'm out.
Yeah. When you said the first HustleCon that you did, you made 60,000 from that?
I think it did between 50 and 60 in revenue. And I probably walked away with 40 grand.
Yeah. Was that crazy to you?
Yeah, it was awesome. That's like $1,000 a day you make in profit. Yeah, it was awesome.
What was the feeling? Like, you
felt,
deliver like, what's the feeling?
I called myself a $50,000 millionaire. Like that first 50 grand might as well have been $1 million. I remember I was like, should I go to Thailand? Should I bring these girls with me to Thailand? Like this is like 27 grand might as well have been 25 million. Yeah, I felt awesome.
Yeah. How quickly do you have the feeling I'm going to do the next one?
October 1st. So I did the first one on July 1st. On October 1st, when I got back from my trip, I said, let's get to work. Yeah. So just a few months. And then I was ruminating on the idea of turning it into a media company during that period. And then I launched the media company in April. It was April 19th of 2016 is when I launched the media company.
Yeah. I'm curious for you, like when you reflect back on it, when you did that first one, why do you think the speakers that you had came?
Because I was up and coming. Like I had good energy. Like it was like clearly like I had the energy of like, I think he's going to go somewhere. I don't know where or how far, but like he'll do something because I was very good at making it exciting for them. Like I'm doing this thing. It's going to be awesome. I've got these other 10 people as speakers who are also interested. Oftentimes I didn't though. I said that line to all 10 of them. And that kind of helped each one say yes. But I had this like energy where I was like pretty positive on the phone with them. And I was like, I'm going to make you look really cool. It's a no-brainer for you to show up because I'm going to make you look awesome. I'm going to make it so you're just going to walk out your door. I'll have a car waiting for you. You're just going to show up. You're in San Francisco. You're going to do your thing and you can leave right away. And I'll promote your company and you're going to look great. I'm going to make you look so good. I'm going to work on your talk with you. This is like a no-brainer. It's going to be so much fun. Like I had this type of energy and like it was easy to say yes, I guess.
You know what's interesting? I was watching Owning Manhattan. It's this show on Netflix.
Yeah, Ryan.
Yeah,
he's cool.
Yeah. And real estate agent, sold billions of dollars of real estate, really successful, came to New York City in the beginning and wanted to be like an actor or something, was like a hand model, completely broke. Ends up selling billions.
He was a hand model?
Yeah, like that's how he used to make money, like when he first got to New York.
God bless him.
Apparently, I guess he has good hands, whatever. But he says this thing, he goes, sales is the transference of enthusiasm.
Yeah, I totally believe that.
Yeah.
I 100% believe that. Yeah, that and like I use that with copywriting. But yeah, it's 100% the idea of like getting my energy and my thoughts and my brain into yours and like infecting you with that. Yeah, I'm a big fan of that.
Yeah. And you know what? I think it's so good because I think a lot of people listening that want to start businesses, but there's something holding them back. They don't see the logical path of how they can get from where they are to where they want to be. And you're missing out the piece, which is just, what about the energy, enthusiasm? Like, that's how you're going to get the speaker. That's how you're going to get the subscriber, the reader, is the enthusiasm piece.
Yeah, I mean, that's a very big deal because like anytime you're starting anything, but even if you're not starting something, even if you're trying to convince someone to like be your friend, to date you, to donate to your charity, like we're all selling some shit, right? We all trying to convince someone of something. And like usually enthusiasm and energy is like one of the easiest ways to get people to like buy into you because you're like, oh, this person's like, I want to be part of that. That feels awesome. It feels really nice to be led by a confident person. And so if you like act confident, even if you're just pretending, like people like getting behind you.
Yeah, that's a really good line. It's really nice to be led by a confident person.
Yeah, it feels good, right? Even like really like even like the leaders of the world, like if they have an employee who like seems like they know what they're doing, It's like, all right, I'll trust you. You show me the way. Like that, like, so it's like everyone likes to be led, not just like followers. Everyone likes to be led in things where they're not an expert in. And so, I learned that by the way, in dog training, like with the dog, like, it's called, being calm, assertive, like a confident person. People love, like, dogs want to be led. The same are with humans. Like, it's fun to it's fun to follow sometimes and not to think.
Okay, so you build. You start with HustleCon. First event 60,000. Second event 150,000. In the act of like promoting HustleCon, you've also built this newsletter where you're promoting the speakers. That gets you
and if you're
10,000 subscribers.
And you could Google it, like Sam Parr, HustleCon, first one or something like that, and I show all the emails that I sent. There's like a blog post where I shared all of them. But yeah, I started that. That's when I started the newsletter.
Yeah, that's awesome. So even when we hear the narrative, it feels like it was just going from like one success to the other. And I know from even doing my business for the last 18 months, it is not that. There are times
because
where it's
like
really tough.
If you're a growth chart can look like this, but if you zoom in, it's like that. It's like lots of ups and downs, and like it looks nice and smooth, but there's all these times when it's down, and the time that it's down, that could be like 6 months. Do you know what I mean? And those 6 months, that's 180 days. That is miserable. That's miserable. It sucks. So no, it sucked all the time. It sucks most of the time. But yeah, it worked, but it sucks most of the time.
And there's certain moments that stand out to you of like, it just sucked a little bit more than all the other ones.
Yeah, dude, first of all, I wanted to quit all the time. Like, I'm happy that my girlfriend, who's now my wife, was with me. I was like laying on the floor all the time. I'm like, I can't fucking do this. This sucks. I'm out. If someone wants to buy the company, I'll sell it to them for anything. I can't stand this. The first week that I started the company, so the idea of The Hustle, it was a daily newsletter. And it was news and business that you needed to know. In order to get customers, I started blogging. I would blog like crazy. I would blog so much that I in order to make people believe that it wasn't just me blogging, I had like fake authors. And like I had one author that was a woman, and I would write like a perspective from a woman all the time, and it was just me. Like I did this all the time. But one of these blog posts that I wrote, I met this guy who was making $60,000 a month on Kindle. And what he would do is he would find really top-selling pickup artist books and kind of like plagiarize them. I thought that was really sleazy, but I thought that was interesting. And so I wrote an article explaining how he did it. And then the next week, I thought it would be funny to kind of like stick it into Amazon's face. I found a romance novel. Romance has a lot of high liquidity, lots of buyers and lots of sellers. I found a best-selling romance novel, and we plagiarized it. And we put a new title on it and a new picture. And we posted it, and we got like 50 friends to quote buy it, and we just refunded them. And it like started going up the charts, and people actually started buying it. And the book publisher the book that we plagiarized was owned by the largest romance novel publisher in the world, which I didn't know that. And they called me, and they're like, you just broke the law, and we're absolutely suing you. And I was like, fuck, our second day of business. Like, and I had wrote a post saying like, I'm about to blow $400,000 on my media company because that's how much money I'd saved. And I'm going to build this huge media company. And I looked like a total douche. And I'm like, these guys are going to take all my money that I have, this business that I wanted to start and have dreams for. It ended on week 2. And then they email me the next day, and they're like, look, it's not a big deal. Just write a blog post saying that you apologize, and we're going to forget all about it. But like I sweated for like 24 hours. I was like, we're done. Like I can't afford a lawyer. And so, yeah, that like right out the gate, it was hard. And then like I had so many issues with hiring people leading people is quite challenging. Leading people is, I think, kind of easy. Managing them is hard. Yeah. So there was all types of, when I started the business, I was 24, 25. And so I didn't exactly know what I stood for. So I kind of hired all different types of people when it's best to hire just like people who are aligned with whatever you're trying to do. And I hired all types of people, and I made a lot of hiring mistakes.
Yeah. You know what, those, and I resonate with it so deeply, like doing what I'm doing at the moment. There are certain nights where I'll like look at the ceiling and you're like, how am I going to get myself out of this situation? Like it's not immediately obvious to you what the next step is. And
particularly if you're the type of you're working or the type of I'm more in, where you have to like create. You're on the treadmill. It's like, I gotta create.
Yeah.
Like I have a deadline. I have to do something. In
Yeah.
my case, it was 6 days a week. And so, yeah, it's very stressful.
Yeah. And even the thing you spoke about, like leading with confidence, one of the most difficult things to do, especially when you have employees, is like, you have to wake up the next day and be like, here's the plan, and seem confident. In your mind, you're like, I have no idea what we're gonna do.
Yeah, and I feel great with that now. I'm very comfortable saying I'm not sure. But I wasn't comfortable with that then. And so you just lie basically. And you're like, it's gonna be great. It's gonna work out, I think. But yeah, it's very stressful. It's a very hard thing to do.
Those nights when you would be with your girlfriend, now your wife, Sarah, and you're lying on the floor and you're looking up at the ceiling and you have that feeling of like, I want to quit. Like, I don't know what I'm going to do next. Like, what keeps you going in those moments? Like, take me back.
Because I put myself in a situation that I couldn't bail. Like, I would always hire people before I could kind of entirely afford them. So like I would hire people when I'm like, if this person doesn't help me, like if I don't make more revenue off this person in 3 months, I'm out of money. And so I would do that a lot. And so it kind of was like, dude, I have to make this work. Otherwise, like I think after 1 year, I think we had 7 employees. And I remember thinking like, this has to work. Otherwise I got to lay them off. And so I like those types of situations. I hate them and I like them at the same time. I also had all my eggs in one basket. So I kind of screwed myself. I think in the first year of business, we did 300,000. The second year, we did 2.2. Third, 5.5.
Million.
5.5 million. Year 4 was, I think, around 12. And then we sold going into year 5. I think we were going to do 18. And throughout that whole period, we had money. I always had at least $2 million in the business bank account. I paid myself $40,000, or $20,000, and like $40,000, and then like another $40,000, and then last year I paid myself a lot of money. But I felt broke the whole time, which was insane. I shouldn't have done that, and so I felt desperate, like a lot, while running the business. And I'm thankful that I married a woman who had a great job, and she was kind of my sugar mama. But like I legitimately felt broke while I was running the business.
Yeah. You know what, we're going to get into the blueprint of how you did it. But before we do, have you reflected on like what that was? Because I think it's interesting, right? Like sometimes as humans, things, and we even spoke about it before, things that we experience as children, it's like you're almost like comfortable. It's weird to say it like this, but you're almost comfortable being broke. Like that's the thing that you know. So even when you're making like a ton of money, it's still like actually in your personal account, it's broke. Like, have you reflected on like, why was it that you had millions of dollars in your business savings?
Yeah, and I treated the business like its own entity. Even though I owned most all of it, I didn't, I was like, that's not my money. That belongs to this business. And I'm the steward of the capital. And I might have the keys to it, but it ain't mine. And so that's a good attitude, but paying myself more. But sorry, what were you saying?
Why was it that you think that you did that?
Paid myself little?
Yeah.
Because I had low confidence and I was like, I'm not worthy of taking a lot of money. These people should have way more. My time should be free. Like I thought that was cool. And I also was like, yeah, that's how it should be. Like I'm a nobody. And that's how a lot of people are with business, where they're like, I pay myself last. I think the owner should pay themselves first a lot of times. Not all the time, but a lot of times. But I think it was just rooted in, I'm uncomfortable taking this.
Yeah. You know what? I think that's so relatable. I think there's so many people that are listening that you can have all of the accomplishments, almost all of the evidence in the world that you are someone, but deep down you still feel like you're nobody. Yeah.
And I don't struggle with that as much anymore, because when I did HustleCon, I would basically we did it from 2014 up until close to COVID. So 19 or 20. And we would have the founders of all these amazing startups. And they were like billionaires and stuff. And if they had to speak at, let's say 1, I would be like, you got to be here at 10 a.m. And they're like, why? I'm like, you got to do sound check. And that was a total lie. There is no sound check at a conference. Like the mic works every time. Like I just take it off this person and put it on that person. Like it works. But I told them that so we all would get to hang out in the green room together. And so I would have like the founder of WeWork and like the founder of like Away Travel, that suitcase company. And I would just get to listen to them talk to one another. And I would throw out a question there every once in a while. And I would get to hear them like complain. And I would kind of do like what you're doing to me, where I'd ask them questions and I would get them to like dive deep a little bit. And basically my takeaway was that there were stories like where someone was like a billionaire and he's like, I'm afraid to fire this person because this person's very alpha and the confrontation scares me. And I'm like, but you're a billionaire. Why are you afraid? He's like, what do you mean? I was like, I don't get it. You shouldn't be afraid. And he's like, dude, I'm afraid about everything all the time. Mm-hmm. Or I would see someone who was just in the New York Times for like a $200 million funding announcement. And they're with me 2 weeks later and they're like, I don't know how I'm going to make this work. Mm-hmm. And I found that to be very invigorating, that the people that I looked up to were like basically the same ballpark as I am in some cases in terms of IQ. Like I could keep up with them in some ways. But they still like were kind of a fucking pussy like I am. Like, and that was very invigorating.
Yeah. But it's at the end of the day, we're all human. Like no one escapes that. Like anxieties, insecurities, fear of failure, scarcity mindset. Everyone has that.
Yeah. And it's cool to like meet some of the people you look up to and hear that many of them have that same thing. That's a very good feeling.
Yeah. Because they're just like you.
Yeah. It feels great.
What did you learn about how to overcome it?
You just do it anyway. I mean, it's a very relieving feeling to know that none of us really know what we're doing. And so if I just act more confident and I have a plan that I've thought through, even if that plan screws up, like it's a worthy cause to go after it. And as I can lead people down that path as if I act confident about it. And I'm honest about it the whole time. I'm like, I think this is going to work. I think this is going to work. If we do this, then this is going to happen. Then this is going to happen. That's the plan. It hasn't been done yet and hasn't been done before, but I think we're going to do it. So I try to be honest about it. But like, yeah, you just can, if you're confident and enthused, people will follow.
Okay. So you build the hustle to this point. You now have huge viewership. Or readership, I should say.
Yeah, I think when we sold, we had roughly 2 million people a day.
2 million people. That's crazy.
Yeah.
What was the point where you felt, and we even mentioned it in the beginning, right? Like you wanted to have this feeling when you were a kid of, I don't have to worry about money anymore. When was the feeling that you genuinely 100% just felt like I've made it?
When I sold, I felt like that. It took about a year to like get used to it. But basically my plan was if I can, so there's a lot of rumors for what we sold for. For most every rumor I've seen, it was a bit more than those rumors. And when we sold, like I remember thinking, like it definitely made me happier. Like to have that like fortress of like that fortress that like you can't fuck with me right now. Like I'm good. Like that made me feel good. But then like I'm 35 now. I think I sold when I was 31, something like that. Like there's always levels though. So now it's like, I need to get to 500. You know what I mean? Like there's always like levels. And that sounds like ridiculous, but it's no different than any sport where like you become elite and you do something amazing. You're like, oh, but I could do it even better. So there's always levels. So I definitely think about it all the time. Money's not my motivating factor anymore, but it is fun to compete with myself and other people on that game. But that's not the number one motivating thing. But I felt like 6 months after I sold, I felt like I could breathe. I was like, oh my God, mission accomplished. Like that was a very proud feeling.
I felt like I could breathe. That is powerful. Okay, I'm curious actually. When you sell a company, is the money just in like an account? Like you could search it up and it's just like a number on the screen?
Basically, so I'll walk you through. So they emailed me in September, I think. They emailed me in September and they said, hey, this company's cool. The hustle's cool. Like, do you guys want to talk about partnership? And the person who emailed me, his name's James Gilbert. He was from like corporate development. And I had people reach out to me and email me about buying us. And they kind of I've been like dragged through a process before and they weren't that serious. And so I was kind of fed up with it. And so I just said, hey, James, it looks like you work in corporate development. Do you want to buy the hustle? Is that why you're emailing me? Yes or no? Because partnership is like a very vague term. So just tell me, are you trying to buy us? If yes, let me know and I'll come with that in that mindset. And he was like, yes, we want to buy you. That's all he said. I said, great. here's a Google Doc that I just made, and I'm going to list out all of the reasons why you should not buy me. If any of those reasons scare you away, just it's all good. We'll end it here. But if you're still interested, let me know. And I listed like anything that would be potentially bad about my company. Like a few months ago, we missed on our revenue target or something like that. I don't know. It wasn't that big of a deal. Because in due diligence, they find all this anyway. So I was like, let's just get it out the way. And he was like, no, I'm still interested. Let's talk. And so we signed a term sheet, I think on October 1st. And that was a 90-day closing period. And so for the amount I sold for, we'll say mid tens of millions of dollars, they take it as serious as a billion-dollar or multi-billion-dollar company. And what that means is basically that they have to do all this due diligence, like a crazy amount. So like if I used Fiverr or some type of freelancing marketplace website and I just paid some guy $10 to make a logo, they need to know who that person was. And if I made them sign an NDA and like the receipt for it, like it's crazy. Now the problem with this is that at a small company like mine, you don't really have like I had like a full-time HR person and like one accountant, and it was the same person. It's really fucking hard to get all of these files because you can't tell anyone at the company what you're doing.
Yeah.
Partially because that's insider information. So a publicly traded company bought my company, so you can't talk about that with anyone. It's like you can go to jail if someone like if I bought and sold the stock based off that information, you can get in big trouble. And so it was so hard. And then the deal went through on February 4th or 2nd, I think. And a week before it went through, I went to Chase. I just walked off the street to a Chase. And I was like, hey, I'm going to be getting a deposit next week. And it's going to be kind of big. Do I need to like warn you? And they're like, what do you mean? I was like, I don't know. Like, I just thought I should give you a heads up. Like, I'm not sure how this works. And I was just literally at like the glass.
Yeah.
And they're like, hey, why don't you come over and talk to this guy over here? And I talked to him like, hey, I'm going to be getting a 8-figure deposit like on Monday. Like, do I need to like show you my ID or something? I don't know. I was like, I don't even know what to do. And they're like, no, you're good. Just accept the money. And then on Tuesday or whenever the deal happened, they just wire you the cash and it's in your checking account. I had previously used this thing called Personal Capital. It's like, Mint.
Mint.
Like a net worth tracker.
Yeah.
And I put like $20 million into a fake like manual account like 6 months prior.
Yeah.
Because your net worth a lot of times is just like this number on the computer screen.
Yeah.
And so I was like, let me just feel what it feels like to have like a $25 million net worth. You know what I mean? And I kind of got used to it, like over those 6 months, just like seeing that fake number on there. But they just, long story short, they just wired to you, just sitting there in an account.
Yeah. You remember that feeling when you just first see the number?
Yeah, it's great. I mean, they say money doesn't make you happy. Makes you happier. I don't know if it makes you happy. It makes you happier. It makes you happier knowing that like, if you get sick, like you're okay. I mean, yeah, it made me happy. It made me happier for a very long time.
Yeah. I want to get into how the people that are listening can do it. And I think the thing that's special about you is that not only did you do it for yourself, there's people around you that have followed kind of the blueprint of how you built the hustle.
Yeah, I'm very proud of that. A lot of people have done that. A lot of people who worked at my company have gone on to build media companies. And very awesome.
Yeah. You know what? Let's get into it. And I actually have a LinkedIn post from.
And by the way, I have to say there was so much luck involved in my journey. So I don't want to, I always want to make sure I don't I had a plan, but there was a shitload of luck that it worked out.
Yeah. Yeah. And actually your co-host on My First Million, Sean, I want to read this post and then get your reaction to it. So he said, I just sold my second company, The Milk Road, and I'm super happy. We grew it from 0 to 250,000 readers in less than a year, self-funded and profitable, biggest daily crypto newsletter. He then goes on to say, I was inspired by my buddy Sam Parr, who I got to watch step by step build the hustle from scratch over several years. I copy and pasted his blueprint, but for crypto.
Yeah, he did. He used the same ads and everything.
So you know what? Let's get into the blueprint. Someone's sitting at home, obviously they got their laptop in front of them. They think that building a newsletter could be a good start. I remember when we spoke about it, you said first you have to be a good writer.
Yeah, if you're gonna be like, if you got to be talented.
Yeah.
You got to have skills. You got to have attributes. You know what I mean?
So talk about how does someone become good at the skill of writing?
I don't think everyone can be good, but I think everyone can improve. The way that I did it was I used this technique called copy work, which is basically where I would get like and it's like a proven method to learning writing. It's the same way where if you were to learn piano, I wouldn't just point at the piano and be like, go write me a song. I would say, learn Happy Birthday, and then we're going to do Jingle Bells, and then we're going to move to like some simple blues music, and then eventually you're going to do that for 5 years, and you're going to learn to like steal and be influenced by a bunch of your favorite people, and you're going to have your own flavor. I think it's the same case with writing. And so what I did was I found my favorite books, my favorite famous newspaper articles. I found famous sales letters, like website copy, and I would spend an hour every day, word for word, writing it by hand. And that's how I learned how to do it.
You know what? I think in the beginning, part of the reason that makes it difficult, you don't even know what's good. Like I remember when I started the podcast, like I don't know what a good podcast episode is from the perspective of someone who's like a host, from the perspective of someone who's world class. You don't really even know as the beginner what's good. So when you say find good writing or like sales letters, like what are some examples or people
like,
that you were following that?
Like I would Google like, what's the world's greatest sales letter? Like it was that simple. And there was like a famous Wall Street Journal advertisement that went out that told a really good story. And the Wall Street Journal claimed that this was the most successful ad of all time. So like it was that simple. Or it would be like The Catcher in the Rye, like a very famous American book. Like I would just Google like what are some of the most like beautifully well-written things. Like that's what I did. Judd Apatow, the famous comedian, the comedy director, he would do like famous SNL skits where he would write it out word for word. And so it's just whatever you like aspire to be similar to or to write similar to, you just copy it word for word.
You know, I actually love that framework. I think the thing I love about it as well, you made it like a daily practice.
Every day you have to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah. To this day, sometimes if I have to write something, I'll go and do it.
Yeah. Can you talk about more of that process in detail of like, what was it that you were doing every day? Like,
it has to be done not on like literally with a pen and a notebook. So in my home, I saved them. I have got stacks of yellow notebooks, and I would spend roughly an hour every day for like 10 months, just writing it word for word.
And it was even,
and then I would like underline it. I'm like, oh, that phrase, the way that he instead of using a comma there, he used a period, and he started the second sentence with the word "and." That was kind of intriguing how that made me feel. You know what I mean? Like I would just like write little notes in the margins like that.
Yeah. You would get into the specifics of it. You actually wrote out the framework. I saw it in an email. You said, step 1 is read and absorb. Find a great piece of writing that you would like to copy. Write it by hand on a piece of paper.
It's got to be by hand.
30 minutes a day. You said, do not miss a day. This can potentially change your life. Skip one day and you'll likely skip the rest. You then go on to say, make a swipe file. Throughout the day, as you see writing you like, save it. A swipe file is just a folder of writing examples that you like. And then number 4, the final one, you say, before writing anything important, spend 3 to 5 minutes copying your favorite writing.
Yeah, that shit works, man. And I didn't invent that process. I mean, that's like up until like probably the 1920s, I believe. That's how we learned how to write in America. But yeah, it's the best way to learn how to write, in my opinion.
Yeah. And so it's even like, I'm curious, like even when you were building the hustle in those initial days, each time, because there was a point where you were the only writer there.
Yeah.
So when you would do these posts, 3 to 5 minutes before you even started, you would be there just like copy work.
Yeah. I had authors who I loved, and I would just copy them just for a few minutes. And I said, today I want to act like this person.
Yeah.
Or today I'm going to write like this person. Yeah, I did that all the time.
Yeah. You know, I actually think both parts are important to your point, which is like you were doing the copy work, but then you were actually applying it somewhere as well.
Yeah, and that's why it's addicting. Yeah, because I would hit send and then people would buy conference tickets. And I'm like, it fucking worked. I got to learn how to do this more. Like, it was awesome. It was a really good feeling.
Yeah. How do you come up with your own style, though?
Well, you're just influenced by a bunch of people, and you steal from 5 of them. So, like, for example, I love this writer named Felix Dennis. He's one of my favorite writers. He's got a book called How to Get Rich, and he's hilarious. And I think his writing is the best. I'm also inspired by Anthony Bourdain. I love his writing. This other author, or this copywriter, David Ogilvy. I just like would find people. I'm like, this is great. I love this. I aspire to be like this.
You know what? I'm curious. Like, before someone actually, like, how do you even know that you're a good writer? Like, before someone even starts a newsletter, like,
Most people suck.
Hmm.
Most people suck when they start because the way that you're trained in school isn't exactly the most entertaining way. And so, like, for example, my favorite framework is AIDA, attention, interest, desire, action. And in high school, you're taught, have you heard of Bing Bang Bongo? Do you remember that?
No.
Do you remember, like, I don't know what they did where you grew up, but in America, it's like you have to have a thesis that like says like, today I'm going to explain why running is such running is so good for your health. And it starts with why it's good for your cardiovascular system, it's good for your muscles, and it's good for your lungs. And then you have paragraph 1 for cardiovascular system, paragraph 2 for your muscles, paragraph whatever. And it follows this like horrible, and then you end with in conclusion. It's like the most like unengaging way to like write.
We actually had the same thing. We didn't call it, what do you say, Bing Bang?
There's like a lot of ways to do it. Well, there's what do they call it? Like a 3-point thesis?
Yeah. We called it PEE. So it was point, evidence, explanation. And like every paragraph would have to have that, follow that structure.
Yeah, I don't like that at all. So I like AIDA, attention, interest, desire, action. And that's like a way better format. And so like most people suck because they're following these things that they were taught in school, but that's an incredibly unengaging way to write.
Yeah. You know what, can you explain AIDA? I think it's going to be so good for someone.
Yeah. So let's say that I'm trying to convince you to drink more water. I could say, drink more water. It's good for you. That's not the most convincing or engaging thing. Instead, I could say, let's say that you are into like building your muscles. I'm like, hey, dude, have you ever seen those bodybuilders with huge muscles at the gym carrying around a gallon of water? So that's an attention-getting sentence. You see, and this is the interesting, the reason they're doing that is because water actually grows your muscles by 20% if you drink it while you're working out. I don't know if that's true. I'm just making it up. And so that I got you interested. You're like, oh, I want to learn more about how to get big muscles. And then desire is like, look, it's actually proven that if you drink this muscle, it does this one thing to the oxygen in your muscle, and it grows it by 30%. The only thing you really have to do is drink water every single day, and you can't skip a day. But if you do that for 1 year, you're going to look like starting here, but now you're going to look like here. Here's your after photo. I just made you desire it. And then the action is like, so all you need to do is go buy a water bottle, make sure it's at least 1 gallon tall, or just use a milk jug, fill it up with water at 8 a.m. every morning, and make sure it's completed by 9 o'clock at night. That's the action. I told you specifically how to take action. And so that AIDA formula I use for everything.
You know what's it's so good. And it's interesting. Like once you start to understand that framework,
you'll see it everywhere. You'll see it everywhere.
Like even with you're talking about writing, it's exactly the same in short form content, right? Everyone always talks about the hook. The hook is the attention. It's like the attention grabber. And then like the sentences that come afterwards, they're building on whatever the theme was in the hook. That's the interest. And then the desire is like making you want it at your core.
Yeah, you see it everywhere. It's just it's in sales. And so like have you heard of like cold call people, like, and like you're in like a boiler room? I used to be like have to like do cold calls, and they would say AIDA, attention, interest, desire, action. This is what we have to do. And so yeah, it's just a very easy framework for selling.
Okay, you know what? Let's move on to the next step. So let's just assume that the person that's listening is a great writer. They're using the AIDA.
Yeah, you have to be good. People forget this step. They like, I want to get in the newsletter. I'm like, dude, but you suck. Like you're not. Yeah. Your product isn't good. So you have to have a good product.
Yeah. Let's say that the product is good. What is the next step? I know when we spoke, you said you have to plan the business. Like you have this process of reverse engineering your success.
Do you have your phone on you?
I do.
All right. You're going to help me do some math. So there's a few assumptions that we're going to have to make. We're going to have to make the assumption that you're going to make money through advertising. There's a bunch of ways to make money through a newsletter. Advertising is the most popular. At The Hustle, we actually owned an advertising newsletter as well as a paid subscription newsletter. But let's just assume it's advertising. So a lot of people, they'll say, I just had this one kid email me and say he's going to create a newsletter on how to pick which is going to be the winning fight for a UFC fight. And so I'm like, all right, so let's do the math. So you're going to send that email 1 day per week because there's 4 fights per month. How many people in the world are going to want this? let's say you kick ass, I don't know, 50,000, maybe 50,000. Now the ad rate for them, I could go and find this by just typing in like how much does DraftKings pay per 1,000 impressions? It's called CPM. I'm just gonna guess and say it's $10. So you're gonna do on your phone, so 50,000 divided by 1,000, that should be 500.
50,000 divided by 1,000. Yep.
All right. Times 4, because we're sending 4 times per month.
Yeah.
And then what did I say the CPM was? 10?
10.
Times 10. That's what?
Times 10. So I got 2,000.
$2,000. That's how much money you're going to make. That's shit. The reason it's shit is because, and people say like, well, but I'm passionate about this. And I'm like, yeah, dude, but the CPMs suck and not that many people want this thing. Or if they really do want it, their buying power is like really low. They're just like, what does a bunch of people who want to bet on sports have in common? They're going to make some bets, but they're probably small, and like the commerce is not particularly huge. Now, let's say that you have doctors. Let's just say that you have doctors, and there's 50,000 doctors in the world. Now, let's say they need news. Like every day, 6 days a week, you're going to send them the latest and greatest on what's happening in the world of heart surgeon news or something. I don't know. For them, I bet you can charge $1,000 per 1,000 sends. And so let's say there's 50,000 of them. So there's 50. So that would be 50 times. And we're going to do it. We're going to send it because it's news. We're going to send it more than 1 day per week. We're going to send it 6 days a week because it's news. They want something on Sunday as well as Monday to Friday. So 6 times 4 is what?
24.
24. So we're going to send 24 times a month. So 24 times 50 is what?
Is 1,200.
Times 1,000.
1.2 million.
Okay. So you see the difference. So that's 1.2. Now 1,000 is quite high for a CPM. But the point of this exercise is to show you that if you pick the right market and if you pick the right type of content that you're sending, so I can't send UFC picks that often because they don't happen. But I could send you doctor news. I bet you there's something going on in the doctor world all the time. I could send you that 6 days a week. And so I just showed you with 50,000 in one industry and 50,000 subscribers in another industry. One makes $2,000 a month. One makes $1.2 million a month. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So the math for the hustle when I started it was, I think I can get 3 million people to subscribe to this newsletter. I'm going to email them 26 times per month, and I think I can charge $50 per 1,000 sends on average. And that came to be, we could do the math again, but that came to be like $50 million. And so whenever you're starting a newsletter, you have to do this math to determine how big is the potential opportunity that you want to go after. And so you have to do this thing called an ikigai. You know what ikigai is?
Yeah.
So it's like, it looks like Olympic rings. And so it's like a Venn diagram. So what I'm good at, what I love to do, what do people want, and what are people willing to spend for? You want to find something right in the middle of all that. Because a lot of times people will be like, well, I love sports. I'll make a sports newsletter. But it's like, dude, people don't pay for that shit to advertise because that has like such a low advertising rate. You need something like B2B or something where like the person reading your newsletter will spend a lot of money. A doctor, for example, if they're making decisions for a hospital, an advertiser would advertise with you because they say, if this person buys MRI machines from my account, they're going to, I'll be able to sell $5 million worth of MRI machines to them. You know what I mean? So that's the math behind the whole thing that you have to do early on, in my opinion.
Yeah. You know what? That's so good. And I love it that we actually went through it step by step because it just shows the difference. Here's the thing that I'm curious about, and I think it's what's going to be the objection of people that are listening, which is I think most people, even this is questionable, but most people know the things that they like, and they tend to have an idea at least about what they're good at. They don't really know what people are going to pay for. So how do you even figure out?
It's very easy. So to determine a CPM, here's how an advertiser, so let's talk about it from an advertising perspective. So a person advertising on your newsletter, sometimes they're either brand advertisers, which means they just want to spend money to look cool. Like a Toyota, like if Toyota runs commercials on TV, I'm not entirely sure if that's going to make me buy a car, but like if I see it a shit ton of times, some people will. Or they're direct response, meaning they're going to click a button right there on the ad and buy something. And so they're usually one or the other, sometimes a little bit of both. But if you're buying an advertisement in a newsletter, you're going to want to see a profit. So if I spend $10,000 with you, I better make at least $10,000 in sales. So in order to do that, you have to do the math. So if I'm, let's say I'm selling a newsletter. Let's say I have a newsletter that is only to 500 people, but it's the 500 people in the whole country who make decisions on buying supplies for the top airlines. So what do you think the top airline average contract value would be if you're like the guy who makes decisions for which type of tires will go on the wheels, of the airline?
Yeah.
Like millions, right?
Yeah.
Millions. I don't know what it is, but it's millions. Now, what do you think if it's for 25-year-old dudes who like comedy? Like not a lot. So like if I'm going to advertise, well, there's 25 dudes who like comedy. I mean, I guess I can advertise a comedy show, but I don't even know if they're all going to be in that city. So maybe I'll make like $500 back if I advertise. You know what I mean? And so the ad rate is determined by the quantity and the quality of the reader. So for example, 1 million mothers who live in middle America who make $40,000 a year, that might be the equivalent to 100 or 1,000 airline parts buyers. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so the equation of how valuable your newsletter is, it basically would look like number of people multiplied by how engaged they are, so how influential you are over them. So if you get behind a product, do they actually like that? Like, will they follow what you say? Multiplied by the price of the product. Does that make sense?
Yeah. You know, it's actually such a good point because I think when people think about things...
Am I rambling? I'm sorry.
No, you're good. When people think about a newsletter or the value of a newsletter, they think purely about the number of subscribers.
No.
What you're saying is actually the spending power of those people that are subscribed and how engaged they are. How much influence do you have over them?
Yeah. So for example, Mr. Beast has huge engagement. So his engagement is crazy high. Over a huge amount of people. They aren't exactly the biggest spenders. They're kids, but that adds up to a shitload of chocolate bars being sold. Do you know what I mean?
Can you actually? I liked one of the pieces that you brought up, which is actually engagement and influence. How do you actually? So, say I'm a great writer, and I've actually chosen an audience that has a good level of spending power. What kind of things were you doing with the writing to actually have influence, to actually be able to sell product off the back of it?
I wrote like a person, and so they felt like they were my friend and they liked me. And that was like the easiest way to do it. To test that, I would write an email that says, I need a good book to read. Reply back with a good book. And if I was sending an email to 10,000 people and only like 3 people reply back with a book, I'm like, shit, these people don't care about me. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like things like that. Like I would just write to them. The cool thing about a newsletter is you write it as if it's just me writing to you, not me to millions of people. Just I'm writing to you. That's it. And I'll talk to you as such. Like I will ask for a recommendation sometimes, or I will like tell you something silly that's going on in my family life. And that built a lot of loyalty.
Yeah. Would you almost say there's a direct correlation between like the more personal you get,
yes,
the more that you almost feel like a friend to them, the more influence you had?
Yeah, 100%. That was our slogan, by the way, at The Hustle, was like, your smart, no-nonsense friends who's going to send you bullshit-free news every day.
Yeah. You know what, now that you say that, it makes sense what Sean said, that he kind of, like the blueprint with the Milk Road was like exactly the same as that.
It was exactly the same.
It was like your friend that understands crypto, basically.
He stole that line for line from me. And then we grew to 100,000 people organically. And then after that, we used paid ads to grow. And I came up with this ad. It was a quote that I just made up. It was, my boss thinks I'm smart. I'm not. I really just read The Hustle. And I spent probably $10 million on that ad or more. I don't even remember, promoting that across Facebook. And if you Google that ad right now, so many other people have used that ad. That ad was like a really good ad. I got lucky. It just worked out. And Sean used that exact same ad.
Yeah.
My boss thinks I'm smart. I'm not. I really just read the Milk Road on crypto.
Yeah.
And a lot of people have used that ad.
Yeah. That's hilarious. Okay. So the equation is almost like it's the number of people in your audience, so your subscribers.
Yeah.
And then it's the engagement, and then it's the spending power of those people. So I'm curious, because I'm sure it's like a balance across all three.
Yeah.
When does someone know that they have something that they should put more into it? Like, you've got a niche that is worth building around.
For me, it was a little bit of a gut decision. I looked at how much traffic Wall Street Journal got and Business Insider got, and they got tens of millions of people per month. So in my head, I was like, there's definitely 1 million people in this world, or at least in America, that want this. Like, I feel pretty certain. And if I can get those million people, here's the outcome. Is that a worthy endeavor? Yeah, that will allow me to hit my goal. So it was just kind of a gut feeling like that.
Yeah. You know what? One of the things you mentioned earlier, you said that in the initial stages, you were doing all of the writing yourself. Daily newsletter, all of the writing you were doing.
Yeah, but then I hired someone eventually. But yeah, I did a lot of it early on.
How big can someone, like, what revenue number could you think someone can grow a newsletter to just doing it themselves?
I got it to $30,000 a month in revenue. There's a world, but back then there weren't a lot of tools, but there's like ad networks now that you could use. So I had to like go and email people and cold call them and ask them to buy ads in my email. Now there's more like networks that you can use, but I didn't have a reputation then, so I was just cold emailing people. Nowadays, I could probably find 5 advertisers that would each pay a set rate every single month to advertise, and that would make my life way easier. I mean, if I were to start a newsletter, which I never would, I don't want to do that anymore. I definitely could do probably 300. I probably do at least $3 million a year. I would think, which
by yourself,
just me and an assistant.
Dang.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, because I would write the newsletter from 3 p.m. to like 6 p.m. And then all day I was spending growing it or doing business development. And I think I could get like 5 or 6 advertisers to each pay me $50,000 per month, given I had at least 250,000 subscribers, and I could get to 250. I mean, I got to 250,000 subscribers in 1 year, so I could do it again probably.
Yeah.
Now it's a lot of work. You got to write a newsletter all the time, so I don't want to do that, but it's a lot of work.
Yeah, but I think even for people listening, that's like an insight. Like, that's almost your mind opening up to the fact you can build a $3 million newsletter with just yourself and an assistant with like crazy margin.
Yeah, I mean, and I know
the possibility.
I have friends that do that. I've got friends that do 2 and 3 million with like them and 2 other people. Yeah, like you could do it for sure. And if you really wanted to do, this would be harder to start, but it's way easier to run. You do a paid newsletter. So people, like I have a friend who does roughly 20 million a year in paid subscriptions. And he's been doing it for 10 plus years. But he's doing 20 million a year with just him writing.
Dang, that is crazy. Okay, you know what? So you mentioned obviously the writing piece and then growing it and business development. Let's start with business development. In the initial stages, you're getting on these calls and like selling these ad spots.
Yeah, this guy named Chris at Wealthfront. I cold emailed him. I said, well, I had a little bit of an advantage because I think the founder of Wealthfront spoke at one of my events. But I basically had like, at that point, 3 times 15, so 35 people spoke at different events. And I emailed all 35. I just used LinkedIn and I found the marketing managers at all 35 of the companies. I was like, hey, your founder spoke at my event. I've now started a newsletter. I currently have, I think I started advertising when I had 50,000 subscribers. I was like, I have 50,000 subscribers. I think this is worth at least like $1,500 or $2,000 for you to advertise on. You want to do it for $1,000, and if it works, keep on going. And they were like, "Yeah, I'll try it for $1,000. Yeah, I'll try it." And I did, and it worked a little bit. And they would keep on going, and I did that to get to 30,000. And then I hired an advertising salesperson, a full-time person, and within 2 months we got to like 70 grand per month. Like once I hired someone dedicated who knew how to do it. I'm not that good at to sell advertising. You have to be pretty organized. I'm not that great at it. But once I had like a really organized person who knew how to do it, I mean, it got to 100 grand in like a few months.
Yeah, that's awesome. Okay, was there ever any stories? I know that people fear this with sales because once you sell it, you have to deliver. Was there one where you got like someone in, they like agreed to the rate, and then you almost like hopelessly under-delivered?
I felt like that all the time. I mean, we did a good job of delivering, and if I didn't deliver, I had a policy that like, dude, if we don't deliver, just give them their money back, or like make them whole. So the cool thing about a newsletter is that like my production costs are like nothing. So if you're not happy, I'll just add you again in tomorrow's edition. Do you know what I mean? Like, and that's what I would do. I was like, I need you to be happy, because with the advertising business, as well as any other business, repeat customers is key. And so we ended up hiring account managers whose sole job was to like say, hey, how HubSpot or Salesforce, here's the results of your campaign. We got a lot of wonderful feedback for it. You got this many clicks. It looks like you had this many signups for whatever thing. How are you feeling? Like, let me get you on the phone and walk me through how you're feeling about this. If you're happy, we can iterate. We can like it was like a enterprise sales gig. You know what I mean?
I love the way that you said that, like make it whole, like make them whole. Because I think so many people when they're doing sales, they get the sale, and I've done this actually. You get the sale, instantly move on to the next one. Like you deliver the thing.
No, you gotta like provide value, dude. You gotta like I won't. Yeah, like I have a podcast now, and like I don't want you to advertise unless you're gonna make a profit. You know what I mean? It's got to be a win-win. Otherwise, you're just a fool, and you're gonna make a little bit of money, and then in a few months, you're never going to see it again.
Yeah, they churn. It's the death of your business.
Yeah, churn is the most important thing I think for every business is retention.
Yeah, you know what? Let's quickly talk about the growth piece. So let's say that I have the sales locked in. I've got, I'm good at writing. How do I actually grow this thing? Like, what are the best ways in 2024?
Yeah, the key. So I'll tell you what we did, and then I'll guess what I think the best thing today is. So the key is you have to know, who am I targeting? Like, literally name them. Like, what is this person? So for me, it was like a 26-year-old who lives in New York, San Francisco, LA, works at any of these 1,000 tech companies and makes like $100,000 a year. That's who I'm going after. So they're kind of a nerd. But where do they hang out? In my case, they hung out on Reddit. That was like a nerdy hangout place at the time. So I was like, all right, what subreddits? Where would they hang out, and what subreddits? And what topics are they currently reading about? And so I went and created content that I felt had a good chance of ranking high on those subreddits that were relevant to the person who I wanted to attract. And so, for example, do you remember Soylent?
Yeah. The drink,
yeah,
right?
Yeah, it's like a drink. It's like a meal replacement drink that like engineers would drink. I paid a guy $2,000 to live on it for 30 days and like write about it.
Yeah.
And so I had the headline. I thought about the headline first, the action, the ADA. Of I lived on Soylent for 30 days. Here's what it made. Here's what happened. And I posted that in the subreddit for Soylent. And we got like 50,000 people who came to the site that week. And I would just do these like big articles like that all the time. And a lot of them hit, some of them didn't hit. But I would always think like, all right, so my audience is on Reddit, it's on Hacker News. And at the time, it was in a variety of Facebook and Facebook groups. So I'm going to create content that's long form articles that's tailored for those people using headlines that will capture their attention. And then when they come to my website, I had a really funny pop-up that followed ADA. And it said, oh shit, not another pop-up. And I said, hey, look, while you're here, here's the deal. This is actually a blog that I've written to promote my daily newsletter where I tell you all the business news that you need to know. Sign up now, and if you don't like it, I'll Venmo you $1. And we would get like 30,000 people a month signing up for that. And I would just churn these articles out like crazy. So only like 30% or 20% of them got a lot of traffic, but I would churn out so many that it kind of added up. So we were able to get 100 or 150,000 subscribers in the first 12 months maybe. And so if you do that full time, you could bang out that many articles too.
Yeah. It's so good. And it's like, it shows how foundational and how important that ADA framework is, right? Because all that you were doing is that you're creating, the attention is like the viral article, the thing that gets, I don't know, hundreds of thousands of people see it. Maybe like a smallish segment of those then click through to your page, maybe 10,000. And then you then have the interest and the desire built in the pop-up, which then convert, and you have the call to action.
And then my welcome email was really good. If you Googled the Hustle's welcome email, a lot of people like wrote blog posts about it. It was like a very famous welcome email that I wrote that was really good. I try to do what's called the forgotten text. So your welcome email, your unsubscribe page, things where you just use the stock text from your web provider.
Yeah.
I always would customize those. Or your pop-up, I would like customize them to like stand out. And that really worked well.
Yeah. You know what's interesting about business and entrepreneurship? I think a lot of people that are really good at it, especially guys, started off as like gamers. And when I hear, even the way you're explaining it, it makes sense. Because it's kind of like, I don't know, it's like when you learn, I'm trying to think of the right game, but like, it's when you learn those like strategy games or like those games growing up where you kind of figure out the way it's played and the rules, and then you're just optimizing the fuck out of it. And it's just like...
And that was the thing with the newsletters. A lot of people didn't think that it could be a real business. But I was like, but no, like, the math says this. And they're like, but dude, an email is like a joke. I'm like, no. This is the rules of the game are this. Like, but let's just add like 3 zeros behind like your subscriber count. Do you know what I mean? And that math still works.
Yeah. If you were going to use this same strategy in 2024, what would you do?
Well, it all depends on where your audience is already living. So if I was going to do tech and business, my audience is living on Twitter right now. So I would get popular on Twitter. If you're appealing, if you're into a car newsletter or something like that, car YouTube is like pretty popular, then I would make YouTube videos and get them to convert to a newsletter. For me, I would never do a consumer newsletter. I would only do B2B. And if it's B2B, I could probably advertise to get them, and they would be on LinkedIn. And I could probably acquire a customer on LinkedIn. I don't know what that goes for anymore. I haven't done it forever. But like I bet you I can get a LinkedIn subscriber or a subscriber from LinkedIn for like $5. And I bet you I can make like $5 a month off of them through ads in my newsletter. Do you know what I mean?
So the reason that you say you would do B2B if you were doing it now, they spend more.
They spend more. And because the bar of content is shit. Like a lot of like B2B.
So boring.
Yeah, it's so fucking boring. So it's like, it's not that hard to like be cool. You know what I mean? Like I was a tech newsletter. It's not that cool. The industry wasn't cool. So if I just said a silly joke every once in a while, people thought it was like the greatest thing they'd ever heard.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. I was reading someone say this recently. Like everyone thinks about like TikTok or YouTube, Instagram, all these platforms.
No, dude, it's way too hard.
LinkedIn, and it's like still wide open to this.
Yeah, it's way easier. It's way easier. It's way easier to go B2B, and you make so much more money. Like I've got a friend or a guy I'm friendly with, and he's got a company that had only like 1 million subscribers, and he sold it. I had 2 million or 3 million subscribers, and we sold for tens of millions. He had like 1 million subscribers, and he sold for 500 million. And it was like all B2B, like the most boring shit, like HR and shit like that. Because like the head of HR like makes software buying decisions that are really costly and important, right? And so anyway, like B2B is way better, way better.
What makes someone buy you? Like when you get I don't even know if you've had this conversation with the people at HubSpot. Like, what is it that they're seeing that makes them buy the newsletter?
The HubSpot ones, so there's basically 2 reasons. One is they just want the EBITDA. So do you know anything about PE or anything like that?
Yeah.
It's a hard industry. I don't like PE. I'm not an expert into it, but basically
private equity.
Private equity. You have a fund, let's just use math. You have a $100 million fund. And what you do is you say, but with a $100 million fund, I can buy 10 companies that are collectively worth $1 billion. And the reason I could do that is because I'm going to use my $100 million to buy the companies, and then I'm going to borrow $900 million to pay for the company. And in doing that, I'm going to buy companies that have cash flow, and I'm going to slowly grow the cash flow. And then I'm going to sell that business in 7 years, and I'm going to return $1.8 billion. These guys get they're $1 billion plus a percentage of the 800 additional million that we made. And I'm going to turn my 100 million into 500 million. You understand what I'm saying? So that's how PE works. And so a lot of buyers in newsletters they just want that cash flow. In my case, it's called the strategic. It's actually way better. So HubSpot is a company that sells CRM and website software. They sell it to small business owners, and the average price of their software, I think, is around $20,000 a year. The Hustle had roughly 2 or 3 million people on their newsletter, of which a lot of them were small business owners, as well as people who made software buying decisions. So HubSpot is thinking, well, I could go and buy ads to grow HubSpot, or I could just buy this newsletter and never have to buy an ad in newsletters ever again, because if I convert 0.1%, which would be 0.1% of 1 million people is what, 10,000? So if I can get 10,000 of them to buy my $20,000 software, that's a lot of money. You know what I mean? And that's how they thought about it. And that was a good math. They did a good job.
That makes sense. So it's just such an extreme cash flowing asset, or it's just a strategically for their business.
Strategic is a way better way to sell, by the way. You get way higher multiples.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, no, this is so good. You know what? Here's where I want to end. We spoke kind of like in your origin, like wanting to be in control of your life. That was like the big thing. That was the thing that you really felt, is like you just wanted to have this autonomy, this control over your life. I'm curious now, because seems like you've kind of done all of the things, right? Like you have a great wife, you have child, you've made the money. Like what is your, even you know what, let me put it like this. If the Sam Parr that's before me now, you're 35, you spoke with the Sam Parr that was 21 or 15, or I don't know what age is the one that's like an inflection point for you. What would you tell them? Because it'd be an interesting conversation to just see
Younger
what
me?
you've achieved. Yeah. Because you got the thing.
I really believe in like making a plan and following the plan and trusting the plan. I would tell myself to do that. I think I would tell like 15-year-old me, I'm like, you're the fucking man. You can do it. Like I really was not a very confident person. I knew I had some type of like, I mean, everyone has a little bit of special stuff about them, and I wanted to like hide like my uniqueness. I like kind of felt like it wasn't cool to be like a dork and shit like that. I'd be like, no, like lean into that shit. Lean into your weird quirkiness. Like I remember being a kid, I'm like, dude, I wish I was like in part of a family like these TV shows where like they were all nice to each other, or like I wish I lived in like one of these nice houses like in California. I'd never been. I'm like, I wish I want all these things. Like, no, like it's cool to be different and like lean into like your kind of weirdness. And that is cool. People will be attracted to that, and you will get to where you need to go if you lean into that and don't be self-conscious about like being quirky or being weird. And I would just be like, no, you're the man. Like,
Yeah.
it's cool. It's cool to be unique. Make sure you beat. What's the phrase? Walk to your own drum beat or something like that. Like, do that.
March to the beat of your own drum.
March to the beat of your own drum. Yeah, I wish I would have had more confidence in doing that earlier on than I did.
Yeah, and you know what? It's even funny. Just when I'm doing these interviews, having these conversations, I observe the guest, right, as you're speaking. And it's like, I said it earlier, it's almost like the degenerate's guide to business. Every time that you speak about these stories of you like doing these
I used to be really
things,
embarrassed of that stuff, by the way. I was really embarrassed about it. I was like, I'm just like a fucking redneck. Like, what am I doing? I want to be
But
more.
now your face lights up when you talk about it.
Yeah, I was like, I want to be more refined. I was like, I want to be all the, like, no, like, be unique. And like, even now, I'm 35 and I hang out with people that are a little bit older than me sometimes, and they're more, I'm like, I'm still a kid. And I was like self-conscious about that for a minute. I'm like, no, fuck that, dude. That's the way to go. And so I feel very confident that like the world is shaped by people, just normal people. And like, I can make my own reality. I can kind of kick my dent in the world. And so now I'm a lot more confident of like not bending into other people's reality. I'm going to bend my own. And so now I'm a lot more confident. But yeah, I wish I was more confident about that early on, of like, you don't have to do it the way other people do it. You don't have to act the way the other people are acting. Like, it's all right. You can have your own path.
Yeah. You know what's funny? I actually wrote that in my notes. I said, I want to maintain my childlike wonder. That's like the biggest thing. Like, if you can maintain your childlike wonder. I was on the subway on the way over here. There's this little kid sitting next to me, and everyone's quiet. He just starts shouting out. Kids will do that. They're just themselves. They control their own reality. And it's like, if you can maintain that and you can lean into it, the things that you're good at, you can achieve incredible outcomes.
Yeah, and it feels awesome. Like, the world wants you to be vanilla. Don't give into it. You know what I'm saying? Also, life goes by really fast, and like, you got to do it your way a little bit. You know what I'm saying? And I get scared of that.
Yeah. Sam Parr, thank you so much, man.
Appreciate it.
Thank you so much for watching this episode. I hope you enjoyed it. It's really a dream for me that I get to do this. It's surreal that this is what I do full time and every week. So if you enjoy the content, if you enjoyed the conversation, the stories, please hit that subscribe button. It helps us immeasurably with growing the channel, with getting guests, all of those things. So please hit that subscribe button, and I'll see you next time.